Have you ever felt a rage so intense you scared yourself, then swallowed it whole just to keep the peace? Maybe it was that moment when someone dismissed your ideas in a meeting, or when you felt completely invisible to someone you cared about. That burning sensation in your chest, the clenched fists, the thoughts racing through your mind. And then what? You probably did what most of us do. You pushed it down, told yourself to be the bigger person, and walked away feeling somehow smaller. Carl Jung once warned, "What you resist not only persists, but grows." In this video, you'll learn how to master your anger, not by suppressing it, but by understanding its true psychological roots. This isn't about becoming a doormat or exploding like a volcano. This is about discovering what your anger is actually trying to tell you, and why that message might be the key to becoming the person you're meant to be. From the time we're children, we're taught a simple but devastating lie about anger. Repress it or explode. Those are your only options. Think about it. How many times were you told to calm down, don't be angry, or good people don't get mad? Society's view of anger is deeply flawed because it treats this fundamental human emotion as something inherently wrong, something to be eliminated rather than understood. Jung had a different perspective. He developed the concept of the shadow, those parts of ourselves we're taught to hide, deny, or suppress. According to Jung, when we constantly push our anger into the shadows, we're not showing strength. We're committing what he called spiritual amputation, cutting off vital parts of our psyche. But here's what nobody talks about: the hidden cost of this amputation. When you suppress anger, it doesn't just disappear. It transforms into passive aggression, those cutting remarks that slip out when you're just being honest. It becomes chronic anxiety, as your nervous system stays constantly activated by unexpressed emotion. It turns into deep resentment that colors every interaction. Sometimes it even manifests as physical illness, what psychologists call psychosomatic symptoms. Jung understood something revolutionary. The energy of anger doesn't vanish when we ignore it. It goes underground, where it grows stronger and more distorted, like a plant trying to grow in darkness. So what should we do with our anger instead? That's where Jung's genius shines, and it starts with completely reframing what anger actually is. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." This wasn't just a clever observation, it was a roadmap to self-discovery. Think of anger not as an enemy to defeat, but as a messenger knocking at your door. What if, instead of slamming that door shut, you actually listened to what it was trying to tell you? Anger is fundamentally a signal that a boundary has been crossed. It's your psyche's way of saying, something important to me is being threatened or violated. Jung viewed all emotions as energy that wants to become conscious, raw material for psychological growth rather than problems to be solved. Consider Jung's own journey with this. He wrote extensively about his struggles with his temper and what he called his father complex, unresolved feelings about authority and power that would flare up in his professional relationships. Rather than simply trying to control his anger, Jung engaged with it. He explored its roots, its patterns, its messages. Through this process, he discovered that his anger often arose when he felt his intellectual independence was being threatened, an insight that transformed not just his emotional life, but his entire approach to his work. This brings us to a crucial question, and I want you to really think about this. What is your anger trying to protect? Is it protecting your sense of dignity when someone treats you unfairly? Is it defending your values when you see injustice? Is it guarding your authentic self when you feel pressured to be someone you're not? When you start asking these questions, anger stops being this scary, uncontrollable force and starts becoming a guide to what matters most deeply to you. Jung's approach to mastering anger wasn't about control in the traditional sense. It was about what he called individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all aspects of yourself, including the ones that make you uncomfortable. True mastery of anger comes through awareness plus expression without harm. This is the crucial distinction. Healthy anger expresses itself as assertiveness, not aggression. Assertiveness protects and communicates. Aggression attacks and dominates. Jung developed several techniques that his patients found transformative, and you can use these same approaches today. First, There's journaling combined with what Jung called active imagination. This isn't just writing about what made you angry, it's having a dialogue with your anger itself. You might write, "Anger, what are you trying to tell me?" And then let your anger respond. This might sound strange, but Jung discovered that different parts of our psyche often have their own voice and wisdom. Second, Jung encouraged symbolic expression. Instead of acting out your anger on other people, you channel it through art, through exploring your dreams, through inner dialogue. One of Jung's patients, a businessman who struggled with explosive rage, began painting abstract images whenever he felt angry. Through this process, he discovered that his anger was connected to childhood feelings of powerlessness, and as he worked with these images, his explosive episodes virtually disappeared. Third, Jung taught the practice of talking to the anger, rather than from it. When you're angry, instead of immediately reacting, you step back and ask, what is this anger about? What does it need? What is it defending? This creates what Jung called a space of consciousness between the trigger and your response. But what if your anger feels too big, too overwhelming? What if it seems to explode without warning? That's where we need to go deeper into Jung's understanding of the unconscious mind. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is especially true when it comes to explosive, seemingly uncontrollable anger. When your anger feels disproportionate to the situation, when you find yourself raging about something small, or when your anger seems to come out of nowhere, Jung would say you're dealing with what he called activated complexes. These are old wounds, unresolved experiences stored in your unconscious that get triggered by present circumstances. Here's where Jung's concept of projection becomes crucial. Often, we think we're angry at the person in front of us, but we're actually angry at something unresolved within ourselves. The person is just the screen onto which we're projecting our internal drama. Jung worked with many patients who experienced this kind of explosive anger. One woman came to him because she would fly into uncontrollable rages at her children over minor misbehavior. Through dream analysis and exploring her childhood dynamics, she discovered that her anger wasn't really about her children at all. It was about her own mother's criticism and perfectionism, which had left her feeling never good enough. When her children misbehaved, it triggered her old shame and inadequacy, which emerged as rage. Another patient, a successful lawyer, would explode at colleagues who questioned his work. Jung helped him see that this wasn't about the present-day criticism, it was about his father's constant disapproval and his childhood vow to never be vulnerable again. Once he understood this pattern, his anger began to transform from an explosive force into valuable information about his deeper needs and fears. The key insight here is that when anger feels too big, it's usually because it's carrying more than just the present moment. It's carrying the weight of old wounds, unmet needs, and parts of yourself that never got the understanding they needed. This is where true mastery begins, and it's based on one of Jung's most profound insights. Your shadow isn't just your darkness, it's also your power. When you've spent your life suppressing anger, you've also suppressed the vital energy that anger contains. Think about it. Anger is connected to your sense of justice, your willingness to fight for what matters, your refusal to be diminished. When you cut off your anger, you often cut off your courage, your passion, and your self-respect along with it. Jung's approach to integrating the shadow meant consciously embracing these rejected parts of yourself. This doesn't mean acting out every angry impulse. It means acknowledging the anger, understanding its message, and then choosing how to channel its energy constructively. One of Jung's patients was a woman who had been taught that nice girls don't get angry. She had spent decades being accommodating and pleasant, but she was dying inside. Through Jungian analysis, she began to reclaim her anger, not as destructive force, but as a source of strength. She learned to say no, to stand up for herself, to fight for her values. Her relationships improved dramatically because she was finally showing up as her authentic self rather than as a people-pleasing facade. Jung taught his patients to consciously channel their anger through rituals, creativity, and deep reflection. Some would write letters they never sent, getting all their anger out on paper before deciding how to respond. Others would engage in physical activities that allowed them to discharge the energy safely. Still others would use their anger as fuel for creative projects or social causes. The key is this. Integration means you're no longer at the mercy of your anger. but you're also not cutting yourself off from its power. You're in conscious relationship with it. Here's Jung's final insight about anger, and it's revolutionary. You're not here to be harmless. You're here to be whole. A truly integrated person can access their anger when it's needed, to protect themselves, to defend their values, to fight for justice, but they're not controlled by it. Let's bring this all together. The old way of dealing with anger, suppress it or explode, keeps you stuck in a cycle of either self-betrayal or harm to others. Jung's approach offers a third path, understanding anger as a messenger, integrating it as part of your wholeness, and using its energy consciously rather than being controlled by it. Remember these key insights. Don't suppress your anger. Understand it. Use Jung's tools of active imagination, symbolic expression, and conscious dialogue. Focus on integration rather than control. And remember that your anger often contains information about your deepest values and needs. Here's a question I want you to reflect on. What's one moment in your life where anger was trying to teach you something? What was it protecting? What was it asking you to pay attention to? When you can answer these questions, you're already on the path to mastering your emotions rather than being mastered by them. If this helped you see anger differently, subscribe, because mastering your emotions is the start of mastering your life. And remember, the goal isn't to become someone who never gets angry. The goal is to become someone who understands what their anger means and can use its energy wisely.